Action Media Studio in Morgantown. Welcome to the Positively West Virginia Small Business Mastermind. I'm your host, Jim Matuga. It's August 6th, 2021. For those of you joining us live on Facebook, welcome and thanks for tuning in. We have a great mastermind panel for you guys today, and our topic is something that I believe is on the minds of a lot of business leaders in West Virginia, and that's cybersecurity. We're going to talk about ransomware and hacks and malware and all kinds of things today. We have joining us today from Fairmont, West Virginia, Justin Seybert. He's a CISO and cybersecurity consultant. Justin, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Booker Walton, majority owner of Mountaineer Technology Consultants in Morgantown. Booker, good morning and welcome back.
Hey, good morning, Jim. Good morning, guys. Great to be on. Thanks.
Absolutely. And we also have Mr. Ed Green, owner of Itrend Technology, also in Morgantown. Ed, good morning.
Grand Risings, everyone. Thanks for having me today, Jim.
Absolutely. I love having you guys on. This is going to be a great discussion. But before we jump in, I want to just mention a few things about our program. Every week at this time, we gather like-minded business leaders from around West Virginia to discuss some of the most relevant business topics of today, just like we're going to do this morning on cybersecurity. Our goal with this mastermind is to inspire and equip leaders to win in business, really to help people, sharpen them, lift them up. As always, we welcome your comments and your questions. Just type those in the comment section of the Facebook Live on Facebook, of course. Positively West Virginia Small Business Mastermind is brought to you by the State Journal, wvnews.com, and Interaction Media. Guys, I want to go ahead and introduce you again. We have Justin Seybert. He's a CISO and cybersecurity consultant. Booker Walton, majority owner at Mountaineer Technology Consultants in Morgantown, and Ed Green, owner of Itrend Technology in Morgantown. Guys, I want to start the program today just by giving folks a little bit of background on who you are and what you do. So, Justin, I'd love to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm a cybersecurity consultant, which means I do just about anything in the gambit, but specifically I focus on risk management, IT governance, security compliance. I go to a corporation or a business entity and, what have you, anyone who needs help, and I will try to complement their business operations and help them bake in cybersecurity, whether they have something there already, help them manage it, grow it, mature it, maybe even work myself out of a job. Starting from the risk assessment, looking at the threats, looking at the risks to the business continuity and operations, and going from there. I come from a background in cybersecurity engineering and solutions design, but that's what I've been doing for like the last 5 years.
Awesome. That sounds fascinating. We're going to learn more about that, Justin. Thanks for sharing. Ed, I'd like to throw it to you. Give us an overview about you personally, as well as Itrend.
So my background is in all things technology, really, but by trade, I am a network architect and engineer. And being in those fields, you also have to be very good at, things like cybersecurity. That's a big part of what it is. But I'm also a consultant as well. A lot of times, to complement what Justin was saying, a lot of times I'm brought in to review and assess, and offer a path going forward for a business to be able to, harden security or make suggestions based off of what it is that their needs are. We have been in business since 2011, and I come from the enterprise world of the federal government, working heavily within the Department of Energy and their cybersecurity world, the network world as well. So I've been doing this for a long time. It's fun. I'm also a certified ethical hacker, CEH. A lot of times that scares people, but what that simply means is, we chase around the black hats that we refer to all the time and figure out their technology, reverse engineer it. So there's a lot of things there, but that's probably more the key points there.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed, for sharing that. We'll learn more about Itrend and a little bit more about your thoughts here in a few minutes. Booker, I'd like to throw it to you. Give us a little overview of you and MTC.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to be on with these two guys. You can tell these two guys are quite qualified to talk about it. I'm going to enjoy the conversation. Personally, myself, I've been in IT, I would say, since I was 6 years old when my dad brought home an IBM. I learned my first programming language at the age of 6.
Wow.
But I came from the state, worked at a place called WVNet for 12 and a half years, but my background is more of an information technician, but I've turned it into a consultancy. That's why we say Mountaineer Technology Consultants, and where these guys work with more government-based hospital, Ed travels the country doing work. He does a fantastic job. I work a lot with small businesses, localized companies in a variety of areas, not just in West Virginia, trying to take what they have and what they can do with their limited budgets and provide them with a similar cybersecurity experience, and also to enable the employee experience. So when we talk about what to look for and what not to do and what to do, I really try and educate employees and such on that so that I empower our customers with their technology.
Yeah, that's awesome, Booker. Thank you, guys. So what I'd like to talk about now is kind of identifying, what it is that we mean by cybersecurity, and really specifically, like, we hear things like ransomware, and it sounds scary. Like, you got to pay money to get your data back, right? I want to learn a little bit about that. I want to educate and equip our audience with some of those things. But, Ed, you mentioned black hats, and we hear black hat, and we hear white hat and all those kinds of things. I would love to just get your guys, again, kind of an around the horn style, just get your thoughts on what it is we're talking about when we talk about cybersecurity specifically. What are the types of things that that are out there right now that we need to be paying attention to right now? Justin, I'll start with you, and we'll just kind of go around the horn.
I appreciate that. So I think cybersecurity, just to give a very broad personal definition, is you're securing cyber assets, right? And that includes the information, the system, any of the systems that are interconnected. You need to provide security for that. I mean, and I could go down the gambit of talking about various attacks, malware, network attacks, distributed denial of service attacks. But really, what we need to understand about cybersecurity is that this is sort of an adversarial proceeding, that people are trying to hurt you. That's the truth, right? We've lost that, I think, in our modern society. This is a fight. It's a different kind, a little bit more sophisticated, not so much blood sometimes. In cybersecurity, it can result in loss in life. But that's what we need to understand about cybersecurity. These are actually people who have a malicious intent to hurt you.
They're bad. They're bad actors. They're bad dudes.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. Great insight. Ed, you talked about black hat. Give us some differentiation on what you mean by black hat, white hat kind of topics. I think it's really fascinating to learn about this stuff.
Yeah, so there's I know that information is floating around, and sometimes it could be a little confusing, but the black hat hacker is the individual that is trying to do exactly what Justin just stated. It's the person on the other end that's trying to leech or steal your information, or your client's information, or your business information, and somehow gain access or use that against you. You mentioned, Jim, ransomware. Of course, that's a hot topic right now.
Yeah.
People are stealing or encrypting people's data and locking it, and charging a fee, usually through Bitcoin, which is, a highly untraceable currency as payment to gain access back to those files that are technically already stolen anyway. So they are trying to hurt you, but black hats are on that side. White hats, an individual like myself, learns the tools and the trade that is required to be able to perform these tasks. So we do a lot of reverse engineering, and it's very difficult, obviously, because we work in spaces that are legal, right? So we work in spaces that are legal to be able to do that. So usually by nature, we're a step behind the black hats. But what we do is offer management to individuals that have been compromised by something that we've already kind of understood the technology about. Or if a company, for instance, does get attacked by ransomware, we can come in, figure out how it's been done. If they're managed by us, usually we can figure out the initial point of entry or how it happened, whether a phishing attack or something like that, and then buy them time to be able to reverse engineer and gain access back to their information. So, so you have the good guys and then the bad guys. I'm one of the good guys.
Awesome, Booker. I think you're one of the good guys too, right?
I try to
so chime in. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this topic as well.
Well, the first thing we need to understand is hacking is a business model. We just need to look at it as what it is. It's a successful business model. Otherwise, people wouldn't be doing it. So cybersecurity is just something you have to invest in and have a mind towards. Because if you don't think people are trying to hack your stuff, you just need to talk to one of us. We will show you where people are trying to hack into your things constantly. So what do we do about that, right? The first thing is obviously that education piece. Obviously, we're putting things in place, whether it be firewalls. Viruses used to be the thing, right? Now it's more malware and ransomware and stuff. Viruses are still a thing, but not something we really talk about anymore. We're going to put pieces in place. But we also understand that the human element will cause us to have issues where people are going to be hacked. So the other thing we want to look at, Jim, is the remediation tactics. How are we doing our backups? Are we keeping them off the same network space that we have our regular data? Those types of things. Do we have things that we're taking off site? The remediation tactics, for the fact that I try to prepare for our clients for, you're probably going to get hacked. And that's just the reality of it. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to tell them you should expect that somebody is going to try and get at your data. What are you going to do? Do you want to have to pay those fees, or do you want to take the steps up front so that you can get your data back? Those are the types of things we try to work on.
Awesome. So guys, how does it work? I mean, are these hackers and these nefarious dudes, are they out there just randomly looking at IP addresses, or are they singling out a specific business or individual to hack? How does that work?
Well, it's both. So, it could be a targeted business or system, much like the stuff that, makes the major news, whether a power grid or an oil grid, or it could be a shotgun approach, which is more likely what you see. There's a lot of attacks that's just sent into the cyber world via internet, and they're just attacking different ports on your firewall, different exploits that are on your website or other websites. Before it used to be, you can almost predict if you would get, or somehow somebody would get infected because they went to a site that was a little risque, right? It's not the case anymore. Social engineering sites happen all the time. Facebook gets infected. A lot of those ads and apps that go through it get infected. You click on one of those games, it could cost you. So it's both. There's companies that are attacked because what they have to offer, but then the mom and pops are also just as much at risk if they're not operating under the right security, because it's happening constantly. And it's a war, much to what Justin was saying, that is happening, that it's invisible. And that's why the federal government, but not just our federal government, the federal governments all over the world spend trillions of dollars, because there's so much going on in the cyberspace, and it needs to be protected. And there's a lot of things that people can do to help manage that and minimize the risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, what are some of the industries that are the most vulnerable right now? I mean, Ed mentioned, power grid, oil fields, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or supply chain. What are you seeing out there?
Healthcare. So, these small, 300, 400 bed hospitals, that sounds big, but they're not, right? These are these small regional hospitals that service rural areas, and they are heavily at risk. There was just something that came out from CISA the other day that talked about a pneumatic tube system. That's the system that feeds your pills for your pharmacy, right? And the hack it's not even that big of a hack. We're talking, when we were probably teenagers, we would have figured out how to do this. It's just a really old Linux kernel on these controllers that hasn't been updated for 4 years. And then from there, we can use that as a platform to attack other systems. So a lot of these healthcare entities are using biomed devices. It's a multifaceted biomed devices that are kind of outside the normal IT system progression, right? They don't get patched every 6 months, every 6 weeks sometimes, right? Like our desktop computers. Our desktop computers, we get Windows updates or Mac updates like all the time, right? Biomeds don't get updated like that. It's a lot more expensive to go through that sort of innovation. So some of these devices will be insecure for the better part of 2 years. And talking about like that pneumatic tube system, they're not necessarily looking from the onset to bring cybersecurity into the design of that product. That's something else entirely. Booker made a good point. That needs to be in your business model because you're going to have this eventually come, it's going to get you. So pay for it up front and mitigate that risk in a controlled fashion or react later. There's only two ways. It's proactive or react. Yeah. I think another thing would be a lot of these smaller hospitals and smaller healthcare entities across the nation, even just thinking about doctor's offices that have 6 employees that they bring in $2 million, $3 million of revenue. Those are great targets. Those are easy. That's driving by with a laptop in your car, hitting their Wi-Fi up and see if it's a flat network. Super chill. And it's low lift, high reward. The point that Booker made about this is a great business model. And not just that, the business infrastructure within the illegal zones of this business, of the hacking business, if you will, it's there. There's ransomware as a service. There's people who write software that allows people to initiate ransomware attacks. So it's all there. And this war, like Ed was saying, super invisible. You're in the fight whether you like it or not.
Yeah. So is it safe to say it's not if, it's when that you're going to be affected by this?
Absolutely.
The probability is super high. It's a win as opposed to if. And if it's an if, you got lucky.
Yeah. Well, Booker, from your perspective, I mean, we're talking about systems like businesses, companies. It could be a healthcare system. It could be a 6-person doctor's office. But what if you're a small business owner and it's just you and maybe a laptop and your mobile devices, an iPad or a phone? Are those devices like a phone or a tablet? Are those at risk for this type of thing as well?
At all times. But before I answer that, I want to, because I think we're missing something. And
please fill in the gaps.
I want Ed to speak on it for a minute, not to put you on the spot, Ed, but I know you deal federal space. The biggest security threat in my mind to this country and to the states right now is the fact that Internet Explorer is still being used for a ton of government websites, government, things that people use. This all has to be transferred over. So the federal government is spending millions of dollars, but they have left these. And I think most of us would know, most of the audience would probably know that Microsoft is moving away from Internet Explorer in 2022. They've already cut support, but they're cutting it out. Ed, what do you see happening? And I'll come back to the small business one, but I'd be remiss if we're going to talk about cybersecurity and we're not going to talk about this. What do you see happening in that space right now with the states and the government in general?
That's a great question. And we have been fighting the battle to eliminate using any services that have to utilize Internet Explorer for the last 4 years, or maybe even more. What's happening now, especially in federal spaces, is that any off-the-shelf application or any service that needs to be reached via the internet or using a browser has been removed to work on more modern, more secure, more hardened browsers, or it's the program itself is eliminated. So the federal space is doing a great job after kind of pounding on that window for a while, so to speak. The powers that be are saying, enough's enough. We're using antiquated technology that is just full of holes and full of pathways to be able to breach. So they're much with the other things. They're listening to the cybersecurity experts now, and all of that stuff is starting to be phased out. It's not 100% because some of those applications are legacy. but in some spaces, it's absolutely necessary that, that it's used, but they're working diligently to improve so that they can work on more modern browsers.
And my point here, Jim, of what I'm trying to say, so the federal government has those funds. But if I were to tell you that one of my clients reached out to me the other day, and they were working with a county in West Virginia trying to go to the county website to pull off documents from the courthouse, and it only works in Internet Explorer, where is that particular county going to come up with the funds to pay a developer to redevelop that site so that it works on Edge or but Justin, but that, I think that's a huge threat. And those are potential opportunities where hackers will have an opportunity to step in. And
I didn't think about it that way, Booker. I mean, realistically, the government is, it's funded by taxpayers, and these risks that the government entities, whether it be state, local, or federal, especially, because that's where all the real money and infrastructure is. Important infrastructure, weather infrastructure. Even right here in West Virginia, we've got these 2 gigantic satellites that are the backup for the East Coast, right? And that's a big deal. They need to be taking the appropriate steps to design systems and understand the cybersecurity risks so they can properly mitigate in the future.
Yeah, I think you guys are onto something there, because whether it's power grid or supply chain or government website with documents and records, or a hospital system, that infrastructure is critical. And much, just listening, trying to make a parallel, but I think, here in Morgantown recently, in the last couple of months, we've had like 4 100-year floods, right? In a period of 4 months. And you look at it, and a large part of it is due to the fact that we haven't really thought about the infrastructure. Like, we're building all this stuff and we're adding all this stuff, but nobody looks at like the storm drains, right? And we'll say, oh, well, we'll deal with that later, right? And it gets, somebody said, I don't like this phrase, but somebody used the phrase, that's kicking the can down the road, right? And so, I think, putting patches and putting things, temporary fixes on things is all well and good. It keeps you running, but you really got to get to the base of it, the infrastructure, the actual the systems that everything's built on. And it is fascinating. And I think, just a couple of examples that we've seen this year with this ransomware, whether it's the power grid that Ed mentioned at the beginning of the show, it seems like, we could be, our country, especially our state, could be potentially brought to its knees by a couple of teenagers. That's kind of scary.
In seconds.
Yeah. 100% true.
So how do we combat this stuff? I mean, I'm kind of curious from your guys' perspective. It's probably a multifaceted approach, but let's talk some practical things like that people can be doing out there, whether you're a small business owner or your medical practice or a hospital or a government agency. What are some practical things that people should be thinking about right now?
Jim, go ahead, Ed. You go first.
Good.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, running back from the small business perspective, the thing that you have to think about with a small business owner is, some of these bigger organizations, whether it be a hospital, federal government or something, if it comes down to a situation where Ed or Justin have to say, look, you're going to have to pay this to get your stuff back. We've exhausted all of our options here. You're going to have to pay. And then sometimes you have to hope they don't figure out you're a government entity or something, because they'll just say, oh, we're going to raise the price. Small businesses can't do that. Small businesses will be out of business. There will be no more business if something like this happens to them. So that's where we go back to what I said in the beginning when we were talking. We have to cook that into their mindset in the very beginning. We have to take steps, whether it be with, all-in-one sort of antivirus, anti-malware, anti-ransomware, firewalls, your routing, VPNs, but then more importantly, your backups. How do you store your data? Do you have it in 2 different spaces? And then probably the most important part is the education of your employees, not to click on that phishing email. What does that look like? I would rather my customers send me off a quick email. Hey, is this real or fake? I've pretty much trained my customers to do that. Send it to my employees. Is it real or fake? If you can get us out of that sense of immediacy that we have as people somewhere in the last 20 years. We need to have information right now. I think it's because of things like this right here. We like to have information. We like to have information all the time. We need to click on something right away because we think, my goodness, somebody sent something. I had an email come to me this morning that was from a K-12 guy that I know saying I had an invoice due. Well, I'm not even working with their K-12 county anymore. And so I knew that was fake. But the normal user, and Justin and Ed are going to laugh. I already see Justin smiling. They'll click on that right now. They'll click on that right now and they'll call us later. That's the education that we have to stop. If we educate our employees, we can stop a lot of this before it ever happens, because that's who they're going after, the weakest link. And the weakest link is always the human element.
Yeah,
that is. Oh, go ahead, Ed.
No, well, that just to echo what Booker said, it really boils down to education. The end user is usually the source of the infection. Phishing is a huge loophole that is used to breach networks. And the other thing, just to stack on top of that, we need to educate and understand what these attacks look like. You know, to us, because we deal with it on a daily basis, it sticks out like we can see it immediately. Phishing, we know, because we're able to connect the dots and we know what it looks like. The other facet of that is that we need to harden these networks that people are using for business specifically. And what that means is, for the person who's not familiar, is that we need to get your network to where it needs to be so that you can optimally run your business and people can effectively do their job, and then lock every other facet of that down. And there are a lot of companies, I would say probably 90% of the companies out there that I deal with before we come in, all the workstations are running in administrative mode and things of that nature, where scripts and applications and Trojans can be easily implemented and ran and literally ignite a network, because the end user has too much ability to move within the network. So there are low cost things that you can do as a small business or even a large business that can help to keep you safe. Nothing is 100%, okay? Nothing is. And you could patch, you can stay on top of all of your hardware, make sure all of the patching is done, make sure you have antivirus across the board, you can do all that stuff, and you could still get infected or run the possibility of unleashing ransomware on your network. However, you can minimize those things. And if you're doing things right all the way across the board, even if you do get infected, even if you do have a ransomware attack, we have a way. If you're doing things the way you're supposed to, we have a way to revert back and save you a lot of money to get you back up and running.
Very good, Justin.
Yeah, no, I wanted to echo, and these guys have such good insight, right? You're talking about insider threats. The greatest threat to an organization is itself. Really, that's where it absolutely starts. Is someone in accounting, someone in accounting gets an email from a hacked email account of the CFO saying, write a check to this account. Okay. Easy $1 million, like that. And then the CEO's on vacation in the Bahamas, is like, gets back and like, or CFO, and like, this is odd. We just sent like 1.5 million to China. So the user education is important, and all that stuff that we talked about just now, super important. But I think from a leadership perspective, we have to be honest with ourselves. We want to be productive. That's like a hallmark of our culture in America, especially. Super productive, almost to a bad point, right? Don't just be productive. You need to understand that you can't be productive, a massive scale of production, without being honest about the risks. So that means talking to people like Ed or Booker, or maybe little old me, and saying, what can we do to do this the right way? And like Ed was saying, some of the stuff is just configuring your Active Directory the right way, so that you don't have a bunch of service accounts floating around on your network. That's easy. That's 5 hours consulting time. And then the threat vector has been taken down almost 50% in some cases. So it requires good leadership, honest leadership. And we got to get out of this modern expectation that, you know what, everything's just going to be all right. I mean, it might be. And I'm not asking everyone to be a hyper cynic, but be a little bit, you know, a little cynical would be great.
I like that idea, because that kind of defines my personality. I'm a little bit cynical on certain things, but I'm not paranoid by any means. But one of the things I think about all the time, you know, my small company, my small business utilizes a nationally known, internationally known online bookkeeping service. It's very quick, if you know what I mean. Yeah. When you have, you know, cloud-based services like that, how secure are those types of things? I mean, we have access to bank accounts and these types of things in these cloud-based services. How secure are those types of things? I you know, I'm just curious to get your all's thoughts on that.
Well, they're very secure, as secure as they can be. They put all of their, I won't say all of their money, but they put a lot of their resources into making it secure, because if it's not secure, then you wouldn't trust it as the end user, and therefore they wouldn't be able to sell it to you.
Exactly.
So, but what you can do, what a lot of people fail to understand when you're doing, you know, software as a service on any level, the endpoint that sends that information over can still be hacked. So if you're on your laptop, Jim, and maybe you're putting in some information, if you have some keystroke logger or some sort of Trojan, guess what? Every keystroke that you put in, or everything that comes up on your screen, that information is now owned by whoever has access to your machine.
Wow, that's scary.
So, yeah, so it's on both ends. Now, the information, once it gets to these guys who are really quick in the internet, who we should not talk about, once they get it, it's going to be as secure as it possibly can be. But you can still get breached, and you can still put your clients and yourself at risk.
Yeah, you're cutting off a large threat vector there, right? So you're offloading some of that risk. And that's a good way for small businesses to do it, is, you know, going to these big software as a service platforms. You know, there's no reason for you to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be. There's a ton of things. If someone else has that volume that they can invest in infrastructure and make it super secure. But to Ed's point, both ends of the line with the two cans, both cans have to be super secure, right? That means yours too, because you can still mess it all up. But it obviously lowers costs, because you're not worrying about the other side of the can. It lowers risk, because again, they're worrying about the other side of the can. And Ed's right, from an economic perspective, they're very, very motivated to make sure they're secure, as well as, you know, regulatory sometimes when it comes to accounting.
Any place, Jim, that is doing credit card processing, you know, Justin talked very early PCI compliance, and I help convenience stores and things with that. I remember, and this has been several years ago now, that I got a call from a hotel up in Washington, PA, and they could not figure out how they had been hacked. You know, we'll just say it was express service, and you can figure out the hotel. But I'd come in, and just to what Ed had said, they had a keylogger on the front desk computer. So what does that mean? Doesn't matter that we're swiping, right? That's still information that is passing through the system, meaning every card was going to a third-party actor, which, and of course, was taking money off of those cards. As a consumer, we have an expectation that when we hand our card over, that we're going to have some reliability of safety. Well, that reliability was broken. And they had to, it took quite a while for them to recover from that. And, you know, quite a pretty penny with fines and things of that nature and everything else, as you might imagine.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to remind our audience who we're talking with today on Positively West Virginia Small Business Mastermind. Our topic is cybersecurity, and we have Justin Seybert. He's a CISO and cybersecurity consultant based out of Fairmont, West Virginia. We have Booker Walton, the majority owner of Mountaineer Technology Consultants LLC in Morgantown, West Virginia, and Ed Green, owner of Itrend Technology in Morgantown. Also, these are some of the foremost experts on cybersecurity in West Virginia, and I just thrilled to have you guys on. We're having a fascinating conversation on cybersecurity, and I know that this topic is on the forefront of everybody who's in business in West Virginia, especially when we hear these crazy stories. And what we're learning on this call today is that it's not a matter of if it's going to happen to your business, it's when. And some of the ways we can mitigate our risk and doing some simple things. Guys, we talked about some simple tips and tactics that people can be doing and paying attention to. What are some, if you will, to don'ts, like when you see that email, how do you know if it's real or not? And if you've downloaded an app, how do you know that it's legit? I mean, what are some things we should be looking out from on the to don't side?
Go ahead and go first, man.
Well, phishing emails they're designed to look like they come from a trusted sender, but the proof is in the details. Again, going back to what Booker was talking about with emails, we live in a very right now society, and one thing I hate to see, and I'm sure a lot of people are very similar, is an email in that little bubble that shows up saying that you have an email, and you just want to kind of blast through it, read it, respond, do what you need to do to get on to the next one. You really have to take the time to really look at it. Look at the message, look at the message header, see it, if that email is actually correct. If it's off, if there's a letter added, if it's, if you really got to trust your instincts, but you really just got to investigate for just a moment to make sure that that is a very legitimate email. And if you're not sure, if you're not 100% absolutely sure, if something feels a little off, you really need to contact the person. If you have access to, if you have network administrator or some way to open up a ticket to have that investigated, they never mind if you if you contact the help desk or contact them and say, hey, I got an email that came in, I'm not totally sure about it. I guarantee you 100 times out of 100, they would much rather you do that than click on that and then really make their jobs harder by infecting the network. So phishing emails are a very big way that they gain access to your infrastructure, to getting inside. So really inspect your emails, take a moment, look at the email, see if there's anything that's off about it. And again, look at the header, look at the message, the email sender. They will try to spoof it to make it look similar, but it will be off.
Yeah, that's good. That's practical, Ed. That's good stuff. It kind of reminds me of, I guess it was probably 20 years ago. We used to get these emails when email first was a thing. And it was like from the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia wanting to give you his $10 billion, fortune, right? And I think that's when it all started. I don't know, but that's what it reminds me of. Justin, what are some practical things on the to don't side?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is like for downloading software, if it seems wrong, it's wrong. Yeah. Like, and I think everyone knows what I mean, right? So like, hey, I found this free version of like Adobe Pro. So, no, it's not. It's not
Adobe. Free. No.
Yeah, no, it is. You're absolutely. You have been duped. Or I hope you haven't been duped at this point. Listen, life is based on a set of principles of reality, right? Like nothing's free, or everything has a cost, right? So if you're going and you're like, man, I was looking on the App Store, like Microsoft, Google, somewhere reputable that actually has like hashes you can check. That's something practical. A lot of these big stores, they have hashes you can check and you can confirm online right there. And that, I mean, I'm not gonna go through how to do that right now. Just Google it real quick. Anyone that can copy and paste can probably do it. And that's one practical thing. But if you don't want to go to those stores, you want to get it somewhere cheaper. Believe me, in the many thousands upon thousands of years of historical human existence, no one, you're not the guy, you're not the one that's going to make this rule change. Everything costs. So I know sometimes technology makes us think we can get away with some stuff, but that's one of the things I would recommend is get your applications, your software, your apps from reputable sources. Not everything you read on the internet is true.
Absolutely. I heard Abraham Lincoln once said that.
Hey, there you go.
So it's got to be true.
Yeah. Honest Abe don't lie.
And I've always said to people, there's likened to what Justin said, nothing is for free on the internet. Even though it says free, even the game, oh, I got this free game from Facebook. Is it free?
Yeah.
Really got to think about it.
Yeah.
The moment you click on that and install and say yes, there's something else that's happening in the background.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. Here's the catch, and this is why, and this is a facet that no one really talks about. A lot of these companies, if you will make these types of things.
Yeah.
And then they'll be dragged into litigation because you willingly infected our network and caused us harm.
Yeah.
They'll lose almost every time because it wasn't a breach. It was something that you allowed. You hit install, you clicked yes, you had okay.
I accept, right?
I accept.
Yes.
And they'll put their disclaimers in there almost in unreadable format, or it'll be so much that you're just not going to read through it, not to play this game or to get this small application.
Yeah. Yep.
The fact of the matter is it really boils down to the end user being diligent.
Ed, you teed up my next segue here, and that is social media and how at risk we are, because you see these apps like where you can create a caricature of your picture, right? Okay. And so you've got to upload your images, you put your kids on there, you're agreeing and consenting to give your face to somebody, right?
Yes.
I mean, is that dumb or is that smart?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. So it's smart if you're trying to, harvest facial recognition and information like that.
Yes, that's my point. Yep.
Right. Cracking me up.
and but it's a dangerous platform. People used to really protect their people would really do everything they could to protect their identity. But now in the information age, with cell phone technology, all these really cool, fun Snapchat apps and stuff like that. You got to understand what you're giving up to get that.
Exactly. And you bring up a great point. People used to be like, I care about my privacy. We don't have privacy anymore. Everything's being tracked, right? Justin, I would like to throw it to you on, the kind of the question of social media. I got a friend request from a friend who actually passed away 3 or 4 years ago. Okay. On Facebook. And I'm like, something's going on here. Right. My mother-in-law was just recently, quote unquote, hacked on Facebook, where somebody was sending out friend requests on her. I was like, well, I'm already a friend with her. Why is she sending me another Facebook friend request? When we say we've been hacked on social media, what the heck does that mean, and how do we prevent it?
Well, that's human engineering, right? That's you're taking the weakest aspect of a system, humans, right?
Yeah.
And you're exploiting them. So especially in like a social context, when we're social, we have our guard down. If I go out to drinks with all these fine gentlemen, I'm probably not going to think someone's, one of them is going to stab me, right? But when you open up that audience, so I don't know, around 300 million, someone might want to stab you. Just a heads up, and just being fair.
Yeah, that's
we need to have a realistic view of humanity.
Great insight.
But so when someone gets hacked on Facebook, it's because they utilize that social avenue, and someone has their guard down, and they click the link. Hey, I saw this crazy video of you on YouTube. Oh my gosh! Click. Wait, what? Now you're concerned about your privacy? Oh, come on. Yeah. So anyway, a little hit there, but I think that's one thing that they get hacked with. We're opening up social media for a different level of services, like payment. I can pay people through social media. I have paid people through social media. I'm no longer on any social media besides LinkedIn. Thank you very much, and haven't been for 2 years. And I recommend that for every human on the planet. I will say that. But truly, that's another risk. Is as you add these different features and it's just everything nowadays, you are opening yourself up to getting popped. Is the technical term.
Yeah,
Booker, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I can't do just LinkedIn, Justin. I use Facebook sort of as like my brand. No, I understand. I completely understand what you're saying. I completely understand what you're saying. One of the things we missed, and I just wanted to go back to it real quick. You talk about do's and don'ts, Jim.
Yeah,
Microsoft does not care whether your computer is hacked. No offense. All the people that call me and say, hey, I've got the screen up on my computer that says Microsoft says I need to call them. They don't care. In fact, they're hoping that you will just go out and get another computer so you can pay them more money. So, and I mean, this is a very real thing for me because we talk about businesses and the cybersecurity threats, but what's the second biggest one? It's our older population. Our older population is getting destroyed by these. I had a couple come to me that were in their 80s, that $35,000 out of their bank account later, they called me. $35,000 before they called me. That money does not come back. That money is gone.
Gone.
And then the other things that we don't think about, there was another situation where a friend of mine had tried to buy a Nintendo Switch from one of those pop-up sites. And gets to Christmas time, that Nintendo Switch didn't show up. So we are being engineered in a variety of ways. And that education, for me to stand up in front of a group of people and say, Microsoft does not care whether your computer is broke or not, they just don't. I'm sorry, don't call that number. Those are the types of things that are the do's and don'ts that make a difference in that world too. And that's helping us in our community. They wouldn't do this stuff, Jim, if it wasn't successful. Like
absolutely
we recognize.
Yep. What about some of these listening devices, such as a microphone on your laptop or your mobile device, or even some of the in-home devices or in-office devices that people might be using, like the Echo Dot and those kinds of things? Are people able to listen in and hear? I mean, is that a something to be worried about, or is that just kind of over in the distance there?
Yeah. Again, it's those cool gadgets that we love, right, and have access to. But when you're installing, like, for instance, the Alexis app, okay, there's certain things you have to agree to in order for it to work. There's certain things you have to click on that say allow or yes. And what do most people do? They're just so excited to start using this new branded technology or the new piece of technology. You just click right through it. But you can gain access to those devices and use them to listen.
Yeah.
And those applications are designed to learn you, what it is that you favor, what kind of things do you like to, a lot of people like to order through the app, the things, and it's supposed to grab that information so it knows how to better market to you. But you got to think about the logic behind that. They're learning more about you the more that you use it. Yep. So yes, those cameras, I tell you right now, in a federal sector, those things are immediately disabled. Microphones and cameras, it's just a no.
Yeah.
So those are certain things that
that's a practical thing. Yep.
We even go as far as to disable the USB ports because you can't use them.
Yeah.
You can't use those devices unless they're approved.
Yeah. So, taking a thumb drive and putting it into a laptop, that could be a potential entry point.
Sure can.
For malware and these types of things. Okay. So yeah, it's interesting. And, guys, I mean, what we're talking about just in that last segment with Ed, is that the essence of artificial intelligence, where these are computer learning. All right. There's not somebody, sitting at Google and listening to what Alexa is saying to you, typing it out, or it's a piece of software that's getting that information, that data, right? It's voice recognition, it's artificial intelligence, and it's all kind of bubbling in together. Is that kind of a fair assessment of how all that stuff works? So it's all data, basically.
Yeah, it's data, and they use correlation softwares to be able to build that information. If you think of it if you could think of it like this, think of a bunch of different colored dots, right? So Ed has a bunch of different colored dots in front of him. Which dot is he going to push the most? All right, so well, he's pushing the red one, 70% of the time more than the green, the blue, the white, the black.
Give him more red.
Give him more red. Everything that's red, because that's what he seems to gravitate toward.
Right.
And that's kind of how they use that correlation software.
So
that's why.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Well, I mean, we've all seen it, and we've heard people talk about it. Hey man, I'm just in my house, and I was looking at buying some shirts. Now everything, my daughter, my son, everybody's getting advertisements through the social media and everything else for shirts. Or we're sitting here talking about cats. Now I'm seeing nothing but cats come through my feeds. And now I'm getting emails about cats. Well, it's not a coincidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Justin, thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think Ed's right on the money. This data, that's what, essentially artificial intelligence is. Simply put, is that it's machine learning. It's statistics rammed down many times, billions of times in the matter of minutes. And then they take that red dot. Okay, well, he likes that red dot. What's related to that red dot? Oh, that's cats. Cat carriers. I got cat litter. Got cat collars. I got all kinds of stuff for you. What's up? And that's maybe great. Maybe I'll leave that out. I won't give my personal opinion there, but that might be great for the consumer who wants to be kind of have stuff arrived to them right in front of them. But it's not great when you're talking about I don't know, financial information.
Yeah.
Or if they find out something that is correlated with you liking cats, and the fact, maybe what you liking cat means you're insecure in this way, and that's a vector for attack.
Yeah.
So when you bring in all these technologies, it's all human, right? It's all human nature. It's all almost psychology. Bring in these technologies that open up all these variables, which is great in a way. You're also opening up vectors of attack if someone knows what they're doing.
So while, from the consumer's perspective, if you like this, you might like that, is a suggestion, could be a cool thing. It could also be used in a very bad way and nefarious way. And especially if that information about you falls into the wrong hands, the black hats, right?
Yep.
I mean, Jim, at the end of the day, there has to be an understanding that there is no privacy. Things that you choose Ed said this earlier, have an underlying factor almost always. I'd probably say always. There's almost always an underlying factor. Our devices, my phone is listening to me right now. My phone is sitting right here. It is listening to every word I'm saying. It is putting that in to its AI, and it's going to pop in. I'm going to see things about cybersecurity, not that I wouldn't anyways. I'm going to see things about cybersecurity all weekend, probably well in the next week, until I start talking about something else. But I understand that. You know what I mean? So there is a certain level of, you have to know this in your head. And I know sometimes ignorance is bliss, but this is not something you can be ignorant about.
I'm gonna say the words bass fishing about 30 times right after this call. That's something I'm really interested in. If you guys
might get some sweet deals. Yeah.
So yeah, this is awesome, guys. I'm curious, if a young person is listening to this show, because we get a lot of entrepreneur minded young people listening to this show, is this a field that you think is going to be a hot field? I mean, I kind of know the answer to this, but what are some thoughts on career opportunities in cybersecurity, and as we go down the next 5, 10, 15 years, what are your thoughts on opportunities in terms of business and career?
Well, I think obviously, this is a threat that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, as long as we have internet accessibility to different platforms. I mean, the world relies on communication through internet, so cybersecurity is not going anywhere as long as our communication framework doesn't change. Now, a lot of people approach me and say, "Hey, I know cybersecurity is hot right now. I would love to get into that." What I would say is cybersecurity is an umbrella. To be very good at cybersecurity, you need to understand network engineering. You need to understand coding and code languages. You need to understand how Microsoft networks work, how Linux networks work, how Unix-based networks work. So you really have to have area of expertise in a lot of different things. And then you can bring all of those tools to bear to become like, a very strong cybersecurity individual. So it's not a one track. Most cybersecurity specialists who are very good at many facets of what IT is all about.
I would bounce off Ed there real quick, Jim, just to say, like, that's what makes the three of us consultants, right? We have to figure out a large variety of things for a large variety of clients and very quickly and give them useful information.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can, if you really wanted to, Ed, you could specialize in something and maybe go work for somebody who needs that need. But if you want to do what, the two of you are doing and myself are doing, you need to have a broad scope of knowledge in a variety of things.
Good stuff. Justin, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so these guys have nailed it, honestly, but it's a multidiscipline field. Like Ed was saying, how many times have you guys been in like a NOC or a SOC, right? Security Operations Center, Network Operations Center, you run into a guy who's like a degree in psychology. Or like myself, just finishing up my law degree. I find that law and cybersecurity intersect so many different times, and it's great, right? And there's definitely for anyone that, even if you have a Bachelor of Science in bachelor's in criminal justice, you can easily segue into cybersecurity in many different fields, because you have cybersecurity in not from the entrepreneurial point of view, but just from getting a good job. Cybersecurity in gas and oil. You have cybersecurity within the government sectors. You have cybersecurity within healthcare. All these different parts of the large umbrella. But from an entrepreneur point of view, I think these two gentlemen nailed it. Like, if you want to do this as a business, find where you can get your slice, not a thin slice, but a pretty large sector of that pie, and then corner in, and then make good friends, right? Because I can't do it all. I am not a certified ethical hacker. I don't deal with incident response, and I certainly don't deal with computer forensics. I know what those are. I've dealt with it, but I don't do that. And for MTC here, I don't do like the server and network infrastructure stuff anymore. I started out in network engineering, but if I need help on that stuff, or the mobile devices or anything like that, I'm going to probably go to them. Like, hey, I have a client, they needed this, but they also needed this, and I want to be able to give them what they need, work myself out of that job. Yeah. It really is truly, if I could say this about any field, teamwork makes the dream work. Yeah. Because there's so much out there. Like, there's the technology side where you're engineering solutions. There's the risk assurance, or cyber assurance side, where you're dealing mostly with where it intersects with the business. It's never ending.
Absolutely. And here in Morgantown, we have West Virginia Junior College, and they have a brand new cybersecurity program that is leading edge on this stuff. And those types of resources, such as West Virginia Junior College, would be a great resource for people. We'll put a link to their site on here if anybody's interested in exploring that as an education pathway. But I loved your guys' insight on that. As we close out our time right now, I want to go around the horn, because this has been kind of a gloom and doom kind of a podcast here today, because it's reality, right? But I'd like to kind of leave folks with a positive vibe as we go into the weekend here. I'd like to just go around the horn. One thing you're optimistic about right now, Justin.
So one thing I'm optimistic about cybersecurity is that we're getting away from that normalcy bias. Normalcy bias is that sort of biases that will lead us to stay when a flood's coming. Well, thankfully, everyone knows about the gas line getting popped. Everyone knows about these hospitals getting popped. People are starting to get up on it. Don't worry. Cybersecurity is not easy, but for the end user, for the normal person living their life, it's actually pretty simple. Just follow these principles, like we talked about, the practical stuff. And it's not easy, right? It requires discipline, but you can do it. Right. And then if you're a business owner out there and you're like, I'm going to get hacked, it's over. I'm hacked right now, probably. No, relax, go get a drink, but you're fine. Be honest with yourself. And honesty is, the truth will set you free. And get the help you need. It's not going to be, this huge check they're writing out. It could be something like Ed said, we're just going to clean up your permissions and make sure your network's not flat, and put some like modern encryption standards in place. Cool.
Be smart. I love it.
Be smart. Yeah.
I love it. Ed, what's the one thing you're optimistic about right now?
Well, to really echo what Justin is saying, a lot of these things in my industry, Justin's industry, and Booker's industry, when, we've heard about these hacks that have happened, these major hacks. they made mainstream news because they were big entities. But the reality is this has been going on for years.
Yeah.
For years. You know, the first ransomware hack, I think, happened in the 80s by, I think it was an MIT biologist or something like that, who sent out something. It was actually called AIDS, AIDS. And they sent out a floppy disk to people who were interested in the information that was going around in the seminar. And it immediately, when you put it in, it immediately began to run an application. And the ransom was small, it was like $300 something, but that was the very first one. So this has been going on for years, and it's been going on at a large level for years, and it's been going on for a large level at the government level for years. You're just now hearing about it. So the doom and gloom, that's the doom and gloom. Everybody's susceptible, everyone. The bright side of this is, echoing what Justin said, is sometimes it costs you nothing, like, you know, shameless plug, guys, but for Itrend, we'll come in and we'll do an assessment for free. We'll come and tell you what you're looking at.
Yeah, that's good.
And 9 times out of 10, the proactive is 1,000 times cheaper than the reactive.
Good
Okay,
stuff.
not to mention the loss of, you know, information and time and maybe even currency coming into your business that you lose during, you know, the management process. So it's not as expensive as you think, but you do need it. From a small mom and pop store to enterprise, it doesn't matter. If you have intellectual property in a business and information you're trying to protect, call one of us, call somebody who's able, and get the information that you need.
Awesome. We'll make sure your contact information for all three of you guys is in the show notes section of this. Booker, close us out. Bring us home.
I'll be brief. I would say, Ed, back in 1995 when I was high school, me and another guy hacked into the military, one of the military websites, and the principal got a call. Fortunately, my mom was the assistant principal.
I'm telling
but
I think the statute of limitations has run out on that, Booker.
Yeah, you're safe. You're good.
But the point of the matter is just what the precautionary, the upfront, much cheaper than the after the fact. Then when you have your cyber liability policy and the insurance company comes to one of us and says, hey, we need you to go mediate this situation. Well, guess what? There's going to be a price tag upon it, and I'll probably eat well that night. We'll get your stuff to a point, but we might not either. That's the thing. But if you're doing the things that you need to up front, you're going to take care of a large swath of what you need to do and have that peace of night that you can go to sleep and know that if something happens, your mean to return to uptime will be small. Good
stuff, guys. I really appreciate the insight, the wisdom that you guys share with our audience today. Justin Seybert, Booker Walton, and Ed Green. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Folks, that's it for today's Positively West Virginia Small Business Mastermind. We do this every Friday from 11 to noon. Our hope is that we brought you some valuable insight that you could use in your business today to win. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for the Positively West Virginia Small Business Mastermind, and they include the State Journal, WVNews.com, and Interaction Media. Positively West Virginia is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can learn more about our mission of helping and advancing small business and entrepreneurship in West Virginia at positivelywv.com. And you can be sure to check out Ed Green's episode at 123 and Booker Walton was episode 103. Learn more about their backstories, and Justin will have to get you on our regular podcast as well. On behalf of our entire Interaction Media team, including our producer today, Mr. Dylan Sheldon, and our incredible team at Positively West Virginia, I'm your host, Jim Matuga. Stay positive, West Virginia. For more positive stories of people and businesses doing amazing things all across the Mountain State, be sure to subscribe to our channel. And also, we live stream every week on Facebook Live. Stay positive, West Virginia.